They made an example. The SEC is about to do the same thing with SolarWinds. Hey everybody, Brian Oakley. Welcome back to cisolife. You can find me down on LinkedIn, anywhere, using hashtag cisolife. And of course, subscribe on YouTube and hit that bell for the latest and greatest updates. As we've been watching the news as of late, quite a bit going on, but nothing seems to be more riling the cybersecurity community than the SEC's current complaint and investigation into what was going on at SolarWinds, and particularly their CISO, Tim Brown. Now, interestingly enough, back in June of this year, both Tim Brown and SolarWinds and another individual were served a Wells notice by the SEC. That notice served as basically a forewarning that what we're seeing happen this week with their complaint was going to come through. So a lot of people surprised that this happened, yet not paying attention to what actually happened in June. Well, there's a 68-page something report, and I can't go through all of it, but I did want to highlight some issues that are put out in this complaint that I find very interesting, that based on a couple different conversations, comments, and folks on LinkedIn and other areas of the netherworld of the internet, there seems to be some confusion about, is this another scapegoat of a CISO? Is this actually wrongdoing? What's going on? Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm an outside observer here, but from my vantage point, and I'll just kind of give you the TLDR, it looks like the SEC has a case to be brought against both this individual and the company to be able to state that they were, in fact, making misleading statements and fraudulent statements in their documentation and their SEC filings. Of note, Brown wrote in an internal presentation that SolarWinds, quote, "current state of cybersecurity leaves us in a very vulnerable state for our critical assets." That's a pretty big remark for a CISO at an organization, let alone a publicly traded organization, and also one that focuses on IT and should have cybersecurity kind of paramount to what they're doing, to be able to state. SEC basically goes out and says SolarWinds and or Brown made materially false and misleading statements and omissions related to SolarWinds cybersecurity risks and practices in at least 3 types of public disclosures. They had a security statement on their website that basically said that they were doing all the right things when in fact they were not. SEC views this as materially misleading. They also concealed from the public known poor cybersecurity practices throughout the relevant period that the SEC is looking at. SEC filings similarly concealed the company's poor cybersecurity posture. They made materially misleading public statements through blogs, messages, keynotes, panel discussions, conferences. There's a list of things that basically shouldn't be doing or talking about if you don't have the security posture to be able to back it up. But this part makes it, I think, the most real for me, and I think it puts a bit of a kink into a lot of people's arguments about, well, where did the CEO sign? Why didn't the CFO sign? Or they did sign these attestations and these. Why aren't they being brought up on this? SolarWinds' poor controls, the defendants' false and misleading statements and omissions, and the other misconduct described in this complaint would have violated the federal securities laws even if SolarWinds had not experienced a major targeted cybersecurity attack. We got to remember that the whole Sunburst thing hit SolarWinds a while ago, and that brought a lot of their insecurity and their lack of controls and deficiencies to light. The reality is the SEC is not looking at that issue as the issue that came out here. In fact, between IPO and in 2018 and sometime around 2021, SolarWinds, with Brown in the background helping shape the disclosure documents like the 10Q, 10K, S1, and S8, they put out 13 documents with the SEC that they had to publicly file as their standard process being a publicly traded company. You have to put out 10Qs every quarter, a K at the end of the year, S1 and S8s at different times. And they put these out, 13 of them, all stating that their cybersecurity ducks were in a row, when in fact they weren't. So I want people in the community, as they kind of look at this, to back away from the SEC is just building another scapegoat, kind of like what they did to Joe Sullivan, which honestly, they didn't scapegoat that guy. He's now a convicted felon. And while the judge gave him a pass, the judge also said that this was a warning to the rest of the industry for a reason. Look into it. The SEC is not playing around, okay? Melissa Armstrong is leading the prosecution and the complaint on this, and you should look up her record. It's pretty good. SEC also generally doesn't put together a Wells notice giving forewarning to an individual or defendant that they're about to go do what they've just done unless they believe that they have a case. And they sure don't put together a complaint like this unless they actually feel like they have the evidence. Now, while everyone's trying to sift through the complaint looking for all the smoking guns and start debating about, well, it's not in there, so what's the problem? I'm not sure that the prosecution wants to show all their cards at this moment. This is the complaint. When they go to trial, if they go to trial in any way, that'll be where the evidence and all the components and the backups and the details of this are going to show their, kind of really show up. So what do we expect to see out of this? Well, we probably see SolarWinds distance itself from Tim Brown. We probably see him take a back seat to the information security industry for a while he gets his legal ducks in a row. We probably start seeing SolarWinds try to reinvent themselves in some way that makes them seem a little bit more appealing to the audience that they're trying to get in front of, specifically shareholders. I mean, their stock did tank after all of this did come out, and I don't see them bouncing back as easily if this doesn't go their way. But I also envision seeing that the SEC moves to some type of settlement, maybe turns Tim against others in the organization so that the SEC can have a nice little bow wrapped up on this investigation and make an example. And I do find it timely, as do some others in the industry, that this comes right at the time when the SEC has launched their new regulations for public companies. Look, folks, regulators aren't stupid, right? I think we're not giving them enough credit for what they're completely capable of doing. New York State DFS did this with Part 500. They put it out. They had people start following it. Some companies attested to what they were doing, didn't actually do it, and then turned around and were fined by New York State DFS for lying on their attestations. They made an example. The SEC is about to do the same thing with SolarWinds, and probably a few other early, larger, sizable, recognizable logos as we start shifting into 2024. Most organizations putting out their public documents will be around March of 2024. We'll start seeing the required, because it's basically this. If your fiscal year ends after December 18th of 2023, your filings need to start including new things inside of section on Rule 106 around what your cybersecurity risk management processes, governance, and all of that look like. And then obviously, as of today, you need to start filing any type of 8K on Rule 105 to be able to disclose any type of breaches. But we're going to see the natural kind of order of things happen right around March of 2024, and that's going to be the deluge of most publicly disclosed statements around the cybersecurity posture of publicly traded companies. There's 8,500 publicly traded companies, and that includes 20 F4 filers, as well as anybody on the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, and on the OTC. So we're going to watch for that. The SEC is going to be watching for that. And we're going to be able to see this all unwind and see really what happens. Coming out of this, we're basically going to be armchair quarterbacking for the next couple of months as we watch what the SEC does. Do they move to try to have some type of settlement? Do they move this all the way to trial? Well, we'll see. Until then, I'm Brian Hoagley with CISolife. Check us out, SideChannel.com. Able to find, hone, build, mature that cyber program you probably should have if you are publicly traded. Check us out. We do quite a bit of work. Now we're publicly out there on the OTC markets as a premium provider. So if you are on the OTC space, talk to us. We can help you. But on the heels of another talk I did with the great folks at ISSA down in the Raleigh area of North Carolina, the discussion around what does good look like. And regulation is a key component to forcing you to start thinking about what good looks like and how you publicly talk about it. So again, Brian Hoagley with CISolife. Check us out down on LinkedIn, anywhere on YouTube. I'll catch you next time.